Hello. In this video, we're going to get started with JavaScript data structures and algorithms on FreeCodeCamp. So I've gone into Google Chrome and I went to freecodecamp.org/learn, and I'm going to click on this second course section called JavaScript Algorithms and Data Structures Certification. Developers use HTML and CSS to control the content and styling of a page, and they use JavaScript to make that page interactive. In this JavaScript Algorithm and Data Structures certification, you'll learn the JavaScript fundamentals like variables, arrays, objects, loops, functions, the DOM, and more. You'll also learn about object-oriented programming, or OOP, functional programming, algorithmic thinking, how to work with local storage, and how to fetch data using an API. Alright, so the first course here is Learn Introductory JavaScript by Building a Pyramid Generator. So this is the first block of courses, and it ends here with the certification project, Build a Palindrome Checker. So let's get started with lesson 1, and I'll reset this lesson. So here we have some console log statements. This is in the script.js file, and this is what is going to be produced in the console over here. You can click this to toggle, click that to toggle. JavaScript is the programming language that powers the web. Unlike HTML and CSS you've learned previously, JS is most commonly used to write logic instead of markup. In this project, you'll learn the basics of JavaScript and apply those concepts to building a pyramid generator. Pyramid generator is a program where you can set the type of the text include letters, numbers, dollar signs, underscores, but cannot contain spaces and must not begin with a number. Use the let keyword to declare a variable called character. Note it's common practice to end statements in JavaScript with a semicolon. So I'll say let character equals, actually they don't want me to set it equal, they just want me to declare it. So I'm not assigning any value, I'm just declaring. Your character variable currently doesn't have a value. That's exactly what I just said. So we can assign a value like this using the assignment operator equals. Assigning a value to a variable is known as initialization because we're doing it for the first time. Initialize your character variable by assigning it the value hello during its declaration. So I'm just going to copy this part of that because our variable is called something else and don't need 2 semicolons. So I'm going to check my code, and there we go. And we may periodically see these ads that we have to sit through. Maybe I can cut these out for you, but unfortunately this is just part of the process of using a free course that you can donate to, and donating may or may not remove these ads. I guess if you become a supporter, it can remove that. I'm not suggesting you do that, just saying it might be possible. JavaScript has 7 primitive data types, with string being one of them. A string in JavaScript represents a sequence of characters and can be enclosed in single or double quotes. So this is not true of all languages, but it's true of JavaScript. And strings are immutable, which means once they're created, they can't be changed. The variable can be reassigned to view the JavaScript console. So we have console button here, it's shown, and we're just going to add console log statement below this one, and we're going to change our variable name to character and check. Looks good. When a variable is declared with let, you can reassign or change the value of that variable later on. In this example, the value of programmer is changed from Naomi to Camperchan. Not sure what that means. Note that when reassigning a variable, do not use the let keyword again. After console log, assign the value world to your character variable. So they want us to do this, but they don't want us to use the let keyword. They want us to assign world, and they have it in double quotes, but let's see if they let us use single quotes as well. Seems good. Now log your character variable to the console again. You should see that the hello string and then the world string are there. So we're changing the variable, so even though we're doing the same statement, since the variable has changed, we should see hello the first time and world the second. When naming variables that are more than one word, specific conventions for capitalization in JavaScript, it's convention to use camel case. Camel case means the first word is entirely lowercase, but the following words are all title cased. That means the first letter is capital. So second variable, yet another variable, and this is an absurdly long name. You see lowercase, and then the new word starts, we have a capital. use camel case to declare a second character variable. So we're going to say let second character equals something. They actually just said to declare it, so I'm just going to put a semicolon there. When you declare a variable without initializing it, it's considered uninitialized. Currently, this one is uninitialized, so we can see what the value is. We're going to console log second character instead of character, and undefined is the value we get out. So that's what they tell us, and this is a special data type, so undefined is a data type, evidently, that represents a value that does not have a definition yet. You can still assign a value to an uninitialized variable. Here's an example. Uninitialized so we can still assign a value to an uninitialized variable. So it's uninitialized here, but then we decide to assign something to it down there. We want the string test to be added to it, semicolon, check. You can also assign the value of a variable to another variable, for example, first, second, and then second equals first. The second variable would now have the value 1 because it came from first. Even though we had initialized it with 2, it's getting changed to the value of first. To see this in action, you can change your second character assignment from test to your character variable. Oh, and so by the way, our character variable is up here. So if you're wondering where that's coming from, that's where it's coming from. So second character equals character. I'm just using copy and paste here to make things faster. You're now ready to declare your next variable. Remove both console logs and the character reassignment. So this would be the reassignment. This would be the console logs. Also remove your second character variable, but leave the character initialization unchanged. You should not reassign the value of character. Oh, okay, leave it unchanged. There we go. Before moving forward, take a moment to review the concepts we've learned. Use let to declare a profession variable and an age variable. Initialize the profession with teacher, but do not initialize the age with any value. So let's type this all out. Let profession equals teacher and semicolon, and then we're going to let age and just add a semicolon. And pro tip, I don't know if they'll let us do this, but you can actually, I believe, and that should be undefined, so that's right. Let's see if they like that. No, they didn't like it. And you should also log profession. I guess I'm not reading the instructions very carefully. And they don't like it, and they like that. Okay. Now you've reviewed declaration and initialization. So this was the declaring part, this was the initializing part. Remove the code you wrote for your review. Do not remove your character variable. So the character is up above all this text here. Use let to declare a count, assign it to 8. Then when using a number, you don't use quotes. For example, so this would be a numeric literal rather than a string literal. So they want us to declare count as 8. Count equals 8, semicolon. Oops. You should have a second let keyword in your code. So they didn't want us to get rid of that one. With the number data type, you can perform mathematical operations like addition. Try printing count plus 1 to the console. Console.log count plus 1. So why can't I just put this right here? I could wrap this in parentheses, but it doesn't really matter because this is just going to evaluate like math, and count plus 1 gets evaluated into 9, and then that gets printed out. You can also perform subtraction, multiplication with the asterisk, and division with the /. Feel free to experiment with the operators in your console. When you're ready to move on, remove the console log. So we could do count minus 1 and get 7. We could do count times 1 and get 8. We could do count over 2 and get 4. and then we'll remove this to move on. An array, in programming, you'll often need to work with lots of data. There are many data structures that can help you organize and manage your data. One of the most basic data structures is an array. An array is a non-primitive data type that can hold a series of values. Non-primitive data types differ from primitive data types in that they can hold more complex data. Primitive data types like strings and numbers can only hold one value at a time, so that's important. Arrays are denoted using special square bracket characters. Here's an example of a variable with the value of an empty array. Declare rows variable and assign it an empty array. So they want us to do something like let rows equals empty array semicolon. When an array holds values or elements, so they're calling each value, this is an element, this is an element, those values are separated by commas. Here's an array that holds 2 strings. Change your rows to be an array with these strings, and the order of the values is important, so follow the order that they give them in. Remember, the strings are case sensitive as well. So see, we have quotes, we're getting nice highlighting here, and we have commas between those, and congratulations. You can access these values using the index of the value. An index is a number representing the position of the value starting from 0 for the first value. So yeah, these are 0 indexed arrays, so this is position 0, position 1, position 2. Even though it's first, second, and third, it's actually index 0, 1, 2. Always off by 1 in JavaScript. Use console.log and bracket notation to print the first value in your rows array. So new console.log rows at 0. The first value is the 0th indexed. Arrays are special in that they're considered mutable. This means that you can change the value at an index directly. For example, this code would assign number 25 to the second element in the array. So we had at the second element to be 2, and then we change it here using the 1th index to 25, and then we console log it, and we should get 25 there. So we're going to update the third element of our array, which is Camper Chan, and change that to Naomi. Third element to be the number 10, sorry. And that would be the third element, but the second index, the 2 index, because it's 3 minus 1 is 2. So we'll say rows at 2 index equals 10 semicolon, and then console.log rows, and there we go, 10 is changed. Notice how the value inside your rows has been changed directly. This is called mutation. As you learn more about arrays, you'll learn when to mutate and when not to. Before moving on, great opportunity to learn common array use. Currently, your code accesses the last element in the array with rows at 2, but you may not know how many elements are in an array when you want the last one. You can make use of the .length property of an array. This returns the number of elements in the array. To get the last element of the array, you can use the following syntax, array.length minus 1. So keep in mind, like, this is a 3 length array, right? So 3 would be the length, and 3 minus 1 is 2, so you would get the 2th, or the second index, the 2 index, would actually be that last element that you're looking for. So it's not array at array length, it's array at array length minus 1. Array length returns the number of elements by subtracting 1. Yep, they're basically telling you what I told you. So update rows 2 to dynamically access the last element and refer to the element above. So we just want to do array minus 1 like this. And it's going to, you should use the .length property. Oh, so it's not called array, it's called rows, recall. So there we go. I don't know if they're going to tell you this, but another trick is, I don't know if you can set values, but you can definitely access values like this. There's a newer method on arrays called at. So you could say array at, let's say 2. And so we see arrays at 2 is 10. And then let's see, can we do arrays at 2 equals 9? Yeah, so it's not a valid left-hand side, which means we can't actually change the value this way. We could do it if we had the bracket notation like this. Oh, whoops. Shouldn't have had that console log at all. Let's see if we can do rows at 2 equals 9. Nope, it doesn't like that. But what if we had done rows at 2 this way? That's totally fine. So rows at 2 is only going to be something you can use to read only an array. You can't actually edit an array with at, but you can access that value. And another cool thing is, instead of doing arrays length -1, which also should be that 10 item, you can do a cool thing with at where you can do negative indexing, like you might have seen in Python, where you can get -1 means go from the end of the list and get essentially it's like -1 means the last element in the array. You might think, well, that's confusing. It's kind of like you could compare it to like this -1, but you might think that's confusing because we're starting 0, 1, 2 here. Shouldn't we go 0, -1, -2? But the logic is kind of like this. Think of the array like a circle. If you start at 0, 1, 2, or 0, wrap around -1, -2, -3. So that's how you can think about it if you want to use the at. Just remember that you can't have that as the left-hand side of an assignment operator. It has to be the right-hand side where you're just, or just when you're just accessing that value. For now, remove your first console log and your rows at rows length -1. Leave the second rows log statement for later. Oh, remove your first console and your this. Leave the second rows log statement. Not sure what we're seeing here. They want to remove all of this? Weird. Another ad for being a supporter. In the scheme of things, it's not that bad. First structured programming tasks that give you all the information you need and a place to try it out. In the last few steps, you learned all about working with arrays. Take a moment to review what you've learned. Start by declaring a cities variable and initializing it as an array of the strings London, New York, and Mumbai. Then log that variable to the console. After logging it, change the value of the last element of cities to the string Mexico City, and then log the cities variable again. So we're putting it all together, I guess. Now, they're always showing you arrays with 3 items. Arrays can have any number of items. Just want to throw that out there. So we're going to say let cities equals, and then brackets, and then we're going to throw in those 3 cities, and we're going to then console.log cities, semicolon here. And then we're going to need another console log, if you recall. So far we're seeing these things print out. And then we are going to change the last element of the cities string to be that. So we're going to say cities at cities.length, which is 3, -1 is the index 2. Set the index 2, or the third item, Mumbai, to Mexico City, and there we go. Changed it. Perfect. Now you're ready to move on to the next set of array lessons. Remove all your code from the previous step. Easy. A method in JavaScript is a function that's associated with certain values or objects. An example you've already encountered is the .log method, which is a part of the console object. So they're calling console an object, and they're calling log a method. Arrays have been have their own methods, and the first one you'll explore is push. This allows you to push a value to the end of an array. Here's an example to add the number 12 to the end of the array. So when I used that array.at method, that was a method of the array prototype. Use push to add the string FreeCodeCamp to the end of your rows array, and add this before your console logs so you can see the change that was made. So we're going to say rows.push FreeCodeCamp, and notice there's no assignment operator. We're just calling the method on the array itself. So this is like the rows is an object, and we're telling the rows, hey, look at yourself and add this. So that's why we don't need the equals, because we're not saying let me set this specific value this way, or let's set the entire array. You're just saying, hey rows, look at yourself and do something. Another essential method is the pop method. It removes the last one and returns that element. When a method returns a value, you can think of it as giving the value back to you, making it available for use in other parts of your code. Create a new variable called popped and assign it in the result of rows.pop. Then log pop to the console. So here we're going to rows.pop, just like push, except there's going to be no parameter, right? Because we're not putting something in, we're pulling something out, we're popping something off. You could think about this like a popping something off of a stack, if you've heard of a stack data structure, or like a stack of CDs, or you have pop goes the weasel pops up and off. So you're going to pop and then say let popped equals rows.pop and log rows. You should log your popped variable. I don't know why I guess they want us to see the array itself as well. So they were logging rows, we want to log popped. So there you see the pop value was FreeCodeCamp, which was the one that we pushed. You should have seen FreeCodeCamp. This is because pop returns the value, we know that. But what does push return? Assign your existing rows.push to a new pushed variable and log it. So they're saying to do the same thing that we just did, but with pushed instead. Whoops, semicolon. And they want us to use let. Sorry, we haven't learned const yet here. And what does it return? So we see FreeCodeCamp. Where's 4 coming from? Oh, it's down here, I guess. That's weird. Yeah, so it's just the pushed is gonna be that FreeCodeCamp. You're expecting to see 4 in the console. Push returns the new length of the array. Whoa, maybe I made a mistake there. So 4 was what it returned. FreeCodeCamp was getting console logged from here. That was the thing that we popped off. And then this was the whole array. So I'm going to put highlighting on those 2 lines and hit Control / to comment those out, just so that that's clear. It's important to be aware, so it returns not the value that you just pushed, it returns the length now of the array after adding the given value. It's important to be aware of what values a method returns. Take some time to experiment with push and pop. When you're ready to remove all of your push and pop calls, remove all of them and your console logs. Change your rows declaration to be an empty array again. Also change your hello to use double quotes. So I'm going to use a trick where I'm going to delete those and then highlight this and then do shift quote to do the double quotes, and it's going to actually wrap. That's a thing a lot of code editors will let you do as well. Generally, it doesn't matter which of the 2 you prefer, but you'll want to be consistent throughout your project. Declaring a variable with the let keyword allows it to be reassigned. This means that you could change the character later to be a completely different value. For this project, you will not want to change these variable values, so instead you should use const to declare them. Const variables are special. First, a const variable cannot be reassigned like let variable. This code would throw an error. So const first name Naomi, and then we're trying to reassign to Jessica. That's not going to work. A const variable can also be cannot be uninitialized. This code would throw an error. Const first name. So it doesn't mean that you can't take something that was initialized and uninitialize it. That's not what they mean. They mean it can't be left uninitialized, so you must initialize it. So replace your let keywords with const, easy peasy. You're now ready to start building a pyramid generator. Your character variable will serve as the building block for the pyramid. Hello might not work very well for that. Change the value of character to be the hash character pound. To generate a pyramid, you'll need to create multiple rows. When you have to perform a task repeatedly, you'll use a loop. There are many ways to write a loop. You're going to start with the basic for loop. For loops use the following syntax: for, open paren, iterator, semicolon, condition, semicolon, iteration, close paren, curly braces, and then logic inside. In the upcoming steps, you'll explore each component of a loop in detail. For now, construct a for loop that includes the terms iterator, condition, and iteration for the three components. Keep the body section within the curly braces empty. I think that they're asking us to do this and just leave this empty. I'm not sure. This wouldn't obviously do anything. The first component should be the string iterator, string condition. I don't know. This is BS. This isn't really a real for loop, but the first component of your for loop should be the string iterator. Okay, yeah, now it's catching up. Your loop now needs a proper iterator. The iterator variable you can declare specifically in your for loop to control how the loop iterates or goes through your logic. It's common convention to use I, this stands for index usually, as your iterator, or I guess iterator could stand for. A for loop allows you to declare this in parentheses. For example, a for loop that declares an index variable and assigns it to the value 100. For let index equals 100, and then second, third. So they haven't gotten to these ones. Condition iteration. Replace the string iterator with let for the variable I. Assign it the value 0 to start. This will give the I variable the value 0 for the first time your loop runs. So this has to initialize a variable that's going to be accessible inside the scope of the for loop, scope meaning inside the curly braces. And we're going to have let, and we want it to be a variable called I, and we want the value to be 0 to start. The condition for a for loop tells the loop how many times it should iterate. When the condition becomes false, the loop will stop. In JavaScript, a Boolean value can either be true or false. These are not strings. You'll learn more about the difference later on. For now, you'll use the less than operator. This allows you to check if the value on the left is less than the value on the right. For example, count less than 3 would evaluate to true if count is 2, and false if count is 4, because 2 is less than 3 and 4 is greater than 3. Replace your condition string with a condition to check if I is less than count. And if you realize count is 8 up here. So we're going to say ask the question, is I less than count? Question mark. Your iteration statement will tell your loop what to do with the iterator after each run. When you reassign the variable, you can use the variable to reference the previous value before the reassignment. This allows you to do things like add 3 to an existing number. For example, b's equals b's plus 3. So important point here, you couldn't use const because remember const variables can't be reassigned, so you wouldn't be able to change I equals I plus 3 because I was const. So you would never use const right here. You would always use let or something else that you haven't learned yet. Use the syntax to replace your iteration with a reassignment that increases I by 1. So you may have seen in other languages you can do I++. In certain languages that's not allowed, but in JavaScript it is. You could also do plus equals 1, or you could, I think plus plus is fine in JavaScript. And then you could also do what they do, which is just very clearly I equals I plus 1. A loop should now run 8 times. Inside the loop, print the value of I and see what happens. So JavaScript uses curly braces unlike Python, so indentation doesn't necessarily matter, but it's going to be a lot nicer to read if you use a formatter to tab over, or if you just tab over yourself. And so you see it goes 8 times from 0 to 7 because we do 0 instead of 1 and we do 7 at the end instead of 8. You should see the numbers 0 through 7. Replace your log statement with a statement to push I to your rows array. So they say replace this with rows.push I. So we're going to put I onto the end of the array. Unfortunately, we can't see what your loop is doing. Use let to declare a result variable and assign it an empty string. The empty string is represented by quotation marks with nothing between them. Let result equals empty string semicolon. Add a log statement to print the value of result console.log result semicolon. To manipulate the result string, you'll use a different type of for loop, specifically a for of loop, which iterates over each item in an iterable object and temporarily assigns it to a variable. The syntax for of looks like this: for const value of iterable. So interesting, they use const here. So what does that mean? Well, const value, we're just assigning this one time every time we go over the loop, one time per loop. Per time we go around, we get a new const essentially. So the scope is per iteration. Note that you use const because it only exists for a single iteration. Create a for of to go through rows array, assigning each value to a row variable. So they're saying go through, use the for of, and say row for const row of rows. So we're saying each time we swing around, create a variable called row that is const, a const variable, and it's going to be coming from each element of rows. And then remember, in your previous loop you used the addition operator to increase I by 1. Now you can do a similar thing with a string by appending a new string to an existing string. For example, hello equals hello plus world would add the string world to the existing string stored in the hello variable. This is called concatenation. In your for of loop, use the addition operator to concatenate the row value to the result value. Okay, so we have result up here. Let result equals open quotes, and then each time we swing around the loop, we're going to plus equals, or we're going to equals result plus row semicolon. Now all your numbers are appearing in the same line. This won't work for creating a pyramid. You'll need to add a new line to each row. However, pressing the return key to insert a line break between quotes will result in a parsing error. Instead, you'll need to use a special escape sequence \n. N stands for new line, which is interpreted as a new line when the string is logged. For example, line 1 equals line 1 plus \n plus line 2. Use a second addition operator to append a new line after the result and row values. So a new line character, and we have to wrap that in quotes, and there we go. Congratulations. Another add. All right. Printing numbers won't result in a visually appealing pyramid. Now that you're outputting the formatted content of your rows array, it's time to update your original loop. Instead of pushing I to the array, push the value of your character variable. So that's defined up here as the hash symbol. So we're going to push the character variable. And now we're getting a bunch of hashes there because we were console logging our result, which is basically, there's so much code here, I'm getting overwhelmed. Now you have a series of hash characters. The pyramid shape is still missing. Fortunately, the I variable represents the current row number in your loop, enabling you to use it for crafting a pyramid-like structure. So they're basically saying we're going to use the current level that we're on of this to decide how many hashes we're going to print out. To achieve this, we'll use the .repeat method available to strings. Honestly, I've never seen this before. This method accepts a number as an argument specifying the number of times repeat will repeat the target string. For example, using .repeat to generate code, activity equals code, activity.repeat 3. So it's kind of like, it's almost like a string multiplier, like multiply code 3 times or add it to itself 3 times. Use repeat on your character and give it I for the number. Can we do it? Okay. Oh, character dot repeat I. And now we're getting a pyramid. You're getting closer. At this point, you're encountering what's known as an off by 1 error, a frequent problem in zero-based indexing like in JavaScript. The first index is 0, which is why you start your for loop with I equals 0, but repeating a string 0 times results in nothing to print. That makes sense. 0 of a hash symbol is nothing. To fix this, add 1 to the value of I in your repeat call. Do not assign it back to I like you did in your loop conditions. So they're saying don't do I equals I plus 1, but just do I plus 1 here. The logic for formatting this pyramid is likely going to get complicated, which means it's a great time to extract that code into a function. A function is a block of code that can be reused throughout your application. Functions are declared with the following syntax: function name, open paren, parameters, close paren, curly braces. The function keyword tells JavaScript that the name variable is going to be a function. Parameter, or parameters, there could be more than one, is a variable that represents a value that is passed into the function when it is used. A function may have many or as few parameters as you'd like. Like a for loop, the space between curly braces is the function body. Declare a pad row function. Do not create any parameter variables yet. The function body should be empty. We need to use camel case for our naming convention. So we'll declare that function has the name pad row and takes no parameters, so it's empty paren, and we have curly braces. In order to use a function, you need to call it. A function call tells your application to run the code from the function wherever you choose to call it. The syntax for a function call is the function name followed by parentheses, and those parentheses would contain any parameters you want to pass in. That's what they're not telling you. For example, this code defines and calls a test function. Call your pad row function. So they want us to essentially just call this function, which does nothing currently. You can think about the function definition as like a blueprint for what's going to happen when you run the function, but it's not actually going to run the function. This part is where you're actually going to run the function, and you could do that many times. Like you could do this 6 times if you wanted to, but we're just going to do it once here. And keep in mind, JavaScript is a scripting language, so like reading a script for a play, you're going to read the lines from top to bottom. So it's going to define the function using those first couple lines, and then it's going to only execute the function once it gets to this line. You're calling pad row, but you're not doing anything. All functions return a value, meaning that they provide the defined result of calling them for you to use elsewhere. Defined is a strong word to use here, since sometimes the result could be undefined. To see the result of calling your pad row function, declare a call variable and assign it your existing call to pad row to that variable. So they say const, they didn't say we had to use let, so I'm going to say const call equals pad row, and Did they say to console log it? No. Now add a log statement, exactly what I was gonna do. And we get undefined. So they say it was a defined output, but actually it was an undefined output, which, if you remember, is they called a data type. Your call variable has an undefined value even though you defined it. This is because your pad row function does not currently return a value. By default, functions return undefined as their value. In order to return something else, you need to use the return keyword. Here's an example of a function that returns the string "functions are cool." So this is just returning "functions are cool" as a string. Use the return keyword to have your function return the string "hello." At any second, my puppy could unplug my microphone. When you have a value that's explicitly written in your code, like hello exclamation, the string in your function, it's considered to be hard-coded. Hard-coding a value inside a function might not make it as reusable as you'd like. Instead, you can define parameters for the function. Parameters are special variables that are given a value when you call the function and can be used in your function to dynamically change the result of the function's code. To add a parameter to your function, you need to add a variable name inside the parentheses. Like this one has name as a parameter and the function is called demo. Name sounds like a useful parameter, so go ahead and add it to your pad row function as well. A function does not have to return a hard-coded value. It can return the value stored in a variable. Parameters are special variables for functions, so they can also be returned. Change your pad row to return the name parameter directly. If you open your console again, you'll see that pad row is returning undefined, even though you defined a return value. This is because parameters need to be given a value when you call the function. When you pass a value to a function call, the value is referred to as an argument. Here is an example of calling demo function and passing Naomi as the argument for the name parameter. Pass your own name as the argument for the name parameter in pad row. So they say, like, Nicholas here, and that's going to assign name equals Nicholas, so that when I go to return name, I'm returning Nicholas for this particular function call. That way, this is a blueprint for no matter what name gets passed in, it's going to return the person's name. Before moving on, take a moment to review how functions work. Declare a function named addTwoNumbers. This function should take 2 arguments and return the sum. Your function should not use hard-coded values. An example of hard-coded function might be this, where they're taking first name and last name, but they're always returning John Doe anyway. This function return John Doe regardless, and that's hard-coded. Declare a sum variable and assign it to the value const sum equals of adding 2 numbers, add 2 numbers with 5 and 10 as the arguments. Log the sum to the console. And we actually have to make that function. I thought maybe they had provided it for us. Copy this template, and our function is called addTwoNumbers, and the numbers should be, doesn't say what they have to be. I'm just going to call them left and right, LR, and it should return L plus R, or do they want hard-coded? Yep, they like that. So we're taking an LR and adding them. With that quick review, you should remove your addTwoNumbers function, sum variable, and log statement. Variables in JavaScript are available in a specific scope. In other words, where a variable is declared determines where in your code it can be used. The first scope is the global scope. Variables that are declared outside of any block-like function or for loop are in the global scope. Your character, count, and rows variables are all in the global scope. When a variable is in the global scope, a function accesses it in its definition. Here's an example of a function using a global title variable. Const title equals professor, function demo name, return title plus name. So you see title is being pulled from the global scope there. Update your pad row function to return the value of concatenating character variable, which is defined up here as hash, to the beginning of the name parameter. Concatenating. So concatenating was that string addition thing. So we're going to do update your pad row to return the value of concatenating your character with name. Variables can also be declared inside a function. These variables are considered to be local scope or block scope. A variable declared inside a function can only be used inside that function. If you try to access it outside the function, you'll get a reference error. This also applies to loops. So if you had a for loop, you could define something in the scope of the loop that would only be accessible inside the loop. To see this in action, use const to declare a test variable. Const to declare a test variable. In your pad row function, initialize it with the value, they use the British spelling of initialize, with the value of testing. Then, below your function, try log testing to the console. You'll see an error because it's not defined. Function to declare test variable in your pad row function. Test is not defined. Well, I know that's the whole point. Your function should declare a test variable. Then below your function, try to log the test to the console. Maybe they want us to let test. To see this in action, use a const, not let const, to declare a test variable in your pad row. Initialize it with the value testing. Const test equals testing. Can I get a hint? Test is not defined. I know that's the whole point, right? To see this function in your pad row function, initialize it. Oh, remove the console log. I'm dumb. Read the instructions. Values returned out of a function are used by calling the function. You can use the function call to directly as the value it returns, or capture the return value in a variable. This way, you can use the value assigned to a locally scoped variable outside the function call it was created in. That was a lot of words. You can use the function call directly as the value it returns, or capture the value in a variable. Values returned out of a function are used by calling the function. Yep, values that are returned, like this one is returned out of the function, so we use that by calling the function with getName. You can use the function call directly as the value it returns, or capture it in a variable, right? So we're using it here, we're capturing it here. This way you can use the value assigned to a locally scoped variable outside the function. I don't think that comma is needed there. Outside the function it was created in. So they're saying to use this variable, you can get it out of the function by using the return value of the function, but you can't just simply use the name variable. Use your testing value, return it out. Return it out, and there you go. Below return, log the string "this works" to the console. Oh, below the return statement. That's not going to work. Scripts run from top to bottom, so it returns before we get to the console log. After doing that, you'll say that this work does not display. Oh, really? It's grayed out. Copy the console log and paste it above the return statement. Now the string should appear in the console. Yep. An important thing to know is that it does not just define the value that will be returned from your function, it also stops the execution of your code. Yep, that's what I was saying. Your first console log. Oh, copy and paste, not cut and paste. Now your call variable has the value testing, but your function is no longer using the name parameter. Remove the name parameter from your function declaration, and then remove your camperchan string from the pad row call. Also remove the console log from the pad row function, both console logs. Because your function was no longer using the parameter, changing the argument did not affect it. Go ahead and remove test, declaration, and return statement from your pad row function so the function's empty again. Well, that seems pointless. As expected, your function returns undefined. Your call variable is not necessary anymore, so remove the call declaration and the console log for the call. More ads. What are we, like halfway there? 63 out of 118 lessons. In order to know how to format a row, your pad row function will need to know which row number you're on and how many rows in total are being generated. The best way to do this is by creating function parameters for them. Give your pad row function a row number and row count parameter. Multiple parameters are separated by a comma. So they want us to add 2 parameters, as these are variable names, remember, and we're separating with a comma. Remember, in an earlier step, you learned about return values. A function can return a value for your application to consume separately. In a function, the return keyword is used to specify a return value. For example, this function would return the value given to the first parameter. Function name parameter, return parameter. Using the return keyword to return the value of character variable repeated row number times. So you want to say use the return keyword, return, to return the value of character dot repeat row number times. A function call allows you to actually use a function. You may not have been aware of it, but the methods like push that you've been using have been function calls. A function is called by referencing the function's name and adding open close paren. Here is a call to the test function. Replace the character.repeat I+1 in your push call with a function call for your pad row function. That felt like a lot of words to me too. Replace your character.repeat in your push with a function call to pad row of what? I guess? No. What did our function take? Row number, row count. Yeah, so row number and I don't know. Row number was I. Row count was it also I? I don't know. You should call pad row in your push call. Yep, we're doing that. Row count's not even being used, so I don't know. Why does that matter? Did they just want us to call it with no parameter? Yeah, I guess so. That was dumb. Your pad row function has 2 parameters which you defined. Values are provided to those parameters when a function is called. The values you provide to a function call are called arguments, and you pass arguments to a function call. Here's a function call with hello passed as an argument. So the parameter was the variable. The argument is the thing we're passing as the parameter. Pass I+1 and count as the arguments to your pad row call. Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to do before, man. And separate them by a comma. You should now see the same bunch of characters in your console. Your pad row function is doing the exact same thing you were doing earlier, but now in a reusable section of its own. Use the addition operator to concatenate a single space at the beginning and end of your repeated character string. Remember that you can use the plus operator. Yeah, I know that. Concatenate this empty space to the beginning and end of your repeated character. Do they want us to do that in here? kind of high level stuff. Oh no, maybe I am dumb. You should concatenate a single space to the beginning of your returned value. That's the end, not the beginning. Beginning and end. Read the instructions. You should concatenate a single space to the beginning of your return value. You should concatenate a single space to the end. Your pad row function should return the repeated character series with a space before and after. Now I really think I'm doing it right. Turn. Oh, maybe I deleted my, this thing? Yeah, I don't know why that happened. Now it's time for a bit of math. Consider a 3-row pyramid. We want it centered. It would look like something like this. So we're adding spaces on the side. We're reducing the number of spaces that we're adding. Empty spaces have been replaced with interpuncts or middle dots for readability. If you extrapolate, you can see the spaces, the beginning and the end of the row, follow a pattern. Update your blank space strings to repeated with row count minus row number. Repeated. So those dot repeat row count row number. We'll do the same thing here as here. And it's just wrapping to the next line, but it's all one line. You can pass full expressions as an argument. The function will receive the result of evaluating that expression. For example, these two function calls below yield the same result. Note the PEMDAS order, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction applies. Looking at the pattern again, so they're saying that if you pass the expression 2 times 3 plus 1, it's the same as passing 7. Look at the pattern again. Update the character value to be repeated 2 times row number minus 1 times. Oh, the character value, not that. Okay, now we got a pyramid. Cool. Your pyramid generator now functions as expected, but this is an excellent opportunity to further explore the code you've written. The addition operator is not the only way to add values to a variable. The addition assignment operator can be used as a shorthand. So I mentioned this earlier, but test equals test plus 1 is the same as test plus equals 1. It's just a shorthand for saying this. Update your iteration to use that syntax. Because you're only increasing I by 1, you can use the increment operator. So when you want to increase 7 to 8 or 8 to 9, you can do test plus plus. Rather than having to pass I plus 1 to your pad row, you could instead start your loop at 1. That is true. Update, this would create a 1 index loop. Update your iterator to start at 1 instead of 0. Now we are not going to need that plus 1 there. I think they're going to ask us to take that off. Update the first argument of your pad row call to be I. Yep, that's what they're saying now, so we don't need the plus 1. Unfortunately, now the bottom of the pyramid has disappeared. This is because you've created another off by 1 error. Your original loop went for I values from 0 to 7 because count is 8 and your condition requires I to be less than count. It's a lot of words. Your loop is now running for I values from 1 to 7. So we went from 0 to 7 to 1 to 7, which is now, what is that, 6 numbers instead of, or 7 numbers instead of 8 numbers. So your loop needs to be updated when I is, to run when I is 8 too. Looking at your logic, this means your loop should run when I is less than or equal to count and not just less than. So let's update less than or equal to count. Comments can be helpful for explaining why code takes a certain approach or leaving notes. You can use double forward slash to leave a single line comment in your code. Add a single line comment for your for loop to remind yourself to change the code to a different kind of loop. So you could just type these, or you can actually type something, change to a different kind of loop, and then you could hit, because your cursor is on this line, you can hit Control / to comment that line out. Or if you did that had highlighting on multiple lines, it would comment out those multiple lines, and you can toggle using Control /. JavaScript also has support for multi-line comments. A multi-line comment starts with /* and ends with */. Unlike single line, multi-line will encapsulate multiple lines, so use those characters to turn your current for loop into a multi-line comment. So they mean at the beginning put this, at the end put this, in the opposite order. If your pyramid has disappeared again, that's okay, it's to be expected. Before you can create your new loop, you need to learn about if statements. An if statement allows you to run a block of code only when a condition is met. And because there's curly braces, it's going to create a scope. That's important as well. They use the following syntax: if condition, in parentheses, open curly brace, some logic inside, close curly brace. Create an if statement with the boolean true as the condition, and in the body print the string condition is true. So we're going to say if open paren true, the boolean, not the string true, but the boolean true, which has no quotes, and then we're going to console.log open paren condition is true semicolon and check. You'll see the string printed because true is in fact true. Change the condition to be false. So this should never execute what's inside now, and in fact it does not. Now the string is no longer printing because false is not true. What about other values? Try changing the condition to the string false. If false, well, false is going to, the truthy value of a string is going to be defined. It is defined, so it is going to resolve to a boolean that is true. And in fact, you see that's the case. The text has appeared again because false is a string. When evaluated, it becomes true. This means false is a truthy value. A truthy value is a value that is considered true when evaluated as a boolean. Most of the values you encounter will be truthy. A falsy value is the opposite, a value considered false when it is evaluated to a boolean. JavaScript has defined a list of falsy values. Some of them include false, 0, empty string, null, undefined, and NaN, which stands for not a number. Try changing if condition to an empty string, which is a falsy value. So now empty string says, nope, that string is not empty. Or the string basically says, when you say if string, it's like, hey, is this string non-empty? Nope, it's empty, so that's going to be false. The test is gone again. Empty strings evaluate to false, making them a falsy value. You'll learn more about truthy and falsy values in future projects. In addition to if statements, JavaScript also has else if statements. Else space if statements allow you to check multiple conditions in a single block of code. Here's the syntax for an else if statement. If condition 1, curly braces, else if condition 2, curly braces, else if condition 3, curly braces. The first condition is false, JavaScript will check the next in the chain. If the second is false, it'll check the third, and so on. If below your if statement, add an else if statement that checks if 5 is less than 10. Then inside of the body of the else if, log the string 5 is less than 10 to the console. So we're going to add else if is 5. We ask the question, the boolean question, is 5 less than 10? Should be. And then in that case, we're going to console log that 5 is less than 10. Sometimes you'll want to run different code when all of the if conditions are false. You can do this by adding an else block. An else block will only evaluate if the conditions in the if and else blocks are not met. Here is the else block added to the else if block. If condition, else if condition, else. An else block to the else, add an else block to the else if block. Inside the else block, log the string, this is an else block, to the console. To see the results in the console, you can manually change the less than in the else if to a greater than. That will make the condition false, and the else block will run. So what they're saying is right now, this if is going to short circuit right here, and exit, it's going to be done because it found something that's true, so it's never going to get to this is the else block, but they want us to flip the sign of this so that it becomes false, and then that we hit this one, so this is the else block. More ads. How are we doing? We're at 83 out of 118. Getting there. 52 minutes. No, 100. Let's see. An hour and 6 minutes. Hour 7 minutes. Not too bad. Now that you've practiced working with if, else statements, you can remove them from your code. Once you complete that, use let to declare a continue loop variable and assign it to the Boolean false. Then use let to declare a done variable and assign it to the value 0. A while loop will run over and over again until the condition specified is no longer true. It has the following syntax: while, open paren, condition, close paren, open curly brace, logic, close curly brace. Use the syntax to declare a while loop with continue loop as the condition. The body should be empty. The puppy is threatening to unplug the microphone. Right now, if you change continue loop to true, your while loop will run forever. This is called an infinite loop, and you should be careful to avoid these. An infinite loop can lock up your system, requiring a full restart to escape. To avoid this, start by using the increment operator to increase the value of done variable inside your loop. The equality operator is used to check if two values are equal. To compare two values, you'd use a statement like value equals 8. Below done plus plus, add an if statement. The statement should check if done is equal to count using the equality operator. The equality operator can lead to some strange behavior. For example, the string 0 is equal to the number 0 with double equal sign, even though one is a string and one is a number. The strict equality operator, triple equal sign, is used to check if two values are equal and share the same type. As a general rule, this is the equality operator that you should always use. With the strict equality operator, the string 0 equals the number 0 becomes false, because while they might have the same value of 0, they're not the same type. Update your done equals count to use the strict equality triple equal sign operator. When done has reached the value of count, we want the loop to stop executing. Inside your if body, assign the Boolean false to your continue loop variable. To make your pyramid generate again, push the result of calling pad row with done and count as the arguments of your rows array, similar to what you did in your first loop. So push the result, rows dot push the result of calling pad row with done and count as arguments. I don't even really know what this is doing at this point. The strict inequality operator exclamation equals equals or not equals equals allows you to check if the two values are not equal or do not have the same type. The syntax is similar to the equality operator, value not equals equals 4. Update your while condition to check if done is not equal to count. Check if done and count are not equals. Do they want this one? Your while loop should check if done and count are not equal. What am I missing here? Oh, update your while condition, not your if condition. Since you've moved the comparison into the while, you can remove the if statement. Your loop is no longer relying on the continue loop variable. This makes the variable an unused declaration. Generally, you want to avoid unused declarations to prevent future confusion. Remove your continue loop variable. Your pyramid generator is still working, however, it could be possible to end up with an infinite loop again. Because you're only checking if done is not equal to count, if done were larger than count, your loop would go on forever. Update your loop's condition to check if done is less than or equal to count. Using done to track the number of rows that have been generated is functional, but you can actually clean up the logic a bit further. Arrays have a special length property that allows you to see how many values or elements are in the array. You would access this property using syntax like myArray.length. Note that rows.length in the pad row call would give you an off by 1 error because done is incremented before the call. Update your condition to check if rows.length is less than count. Update your condition to check if rows.length is less than count. Not less than or equal to, but less than count. Replace the done reference in your pad row call with rows.length plus 1. Now you no longer need your done variable. Remove the increment operation from your loop and the variable declaration for done. That's a very clean and functional loop. Nice work, but there's still more to explore. Use a multi-line comment to comment out your while loop. What if you made your pyramid upside down or inverted? Time to try it out. Start by creating a new for loop, declare your iterator I and assign it the value of count, then use the boolean false for your condition and iteration statements. Let's see if we can do this. For, open paren, let I equals count, semicolon, boolean false for your condition and iteration. So we'll just use false, false? Is that what they mean? Because you're going to loop in the opposite direction, your loop needs to run while I is greater than 0. You can use the greater than operator for this. Set your condition to I greater than 0. Your iteration statement is going to be different. Instead of adding 1 to I with each loop, you need to subtract 1. Like you did earlier with I equals I plus 1, update it to subtract 1 from I. So I'm going to see if it'll take I minus minus. No, they want I equals I minus 1. Again, push the result of calling pad row with your I and count variables to your rows array. Open up the console to see the upside down pyramid. Push the result of calling pad row with I and count. I and count. Just like addition, there are very different operators you can use for subtraction. There are different operators. The subtraction assignment operator minus equals subtracts the given value from the current value and assigns it back. Replace your iteration with the correct statement using the subtraction assignment. So we'll do minus equals 1. Because, time for a break. Let's take the puppy away. We're almost there. Because you're only subtracting 1, you can use the decrement minus minus operator. Use a multi-line comment to comment out this loop as well to prepare for the next approach. You can actually build up the inverted pyramid without needing a loop to loop backwards like you did. To do this, you'll need to learn a couple of new array methods. Start by using const to declare a numbers variable. Assign it an array with the elements 1, 2, 3, and then log the numbers array. The unshift method of an array allows you to add a value to the beginning of the array, unlike push, which adds it at the end. Unshift returns the new length of the array, just like push did. Use const to declare an unshifted variable and assign it the result of calling unshift on numbers. Pass the value 5 as the argument. Then print out your unshifted variable. Arrays also have a shift method. This will remove the first element of the array, unlike pop, which removes the last. The reason they use the word shift is because it's kind of like you're shifting to the left, and unshift is like shifting to the right and putting something new in there. The numbers array would be 2, 3 after shifting out 1. Directly below your numbers array, declare a shifted variable and then assign it the value of calling shift. On the next line, log the shifted variable to the console. Don't need an argument. And we're going to log it just like this, and it should give us the new value, the new length of the array maybe, just like unshift, or just like pop. Now that you've tried these methods, you can do another inverted pyramid approach. But first you need to clean up your experimentation. Remove your numbers array and the method calls and log calls. So everything. Sometimes you may wish to bring back previous code that you commented out. You can do so by removing this, the comment symbols. Uncomment only your first for loop. Leave the single line comment and the other 2 multi-line comments. Your pyramid is no longer inverted. This is because you're adding rows to the end of the array. Update your loop to add new rows to the beginning of the array. What if you had a way to toggle between an inverted pyramid and a standard pyramid? Start by declaring an inverted variable and assigning the value true, so you're not changing this variable in your code, but you'll need to use the let so our test can modify it later. Use an if statement to check if inverted is true. Now move your unshift call into your if block. If your pyramid is not inverted, then you'll want to have an else block that builds the pyramid in the normal order. In the earlier steps, you learned how to work with else statements like this. So they're saying do else and then do the normal order by pushing instead of unshifting. I think. Whoops. They just want us to add the else block at this point. When inverted, you want to build the standard one with push. I was getting ahead there. Your pyramid generator is now in a finished state with more functionality than you originally planned. This next step is to clean up your code, remove all comments, both single line and multi-line, from your code. Nice work. Experiment with different values for your character and count and inverted variables. When you're ready to move on to your next project, set character to exclamation, count to 10, inverted to false, and continue. So what if we made count like 55? It's way too big. Make it like 16. Much bigger pyramid. Make inverted 1, which would be true. Make inverted open quotes, which would resolve to false. Or we could say 7, which would resolve to true. Pretty cool. Inverted to false, count to 10, character 2, exclamation points. Whoa, cool. Congratulations, your code passes. Submit your code to continue. So we just completed Learn Introductory JavaScript by building a pyramid generator. And there we go. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. We got through 118 lessons, the entire mini course, Learn Introductory JavaScript by building a pyramid generator. So now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more mini projects and a certification project within this block, and then there's a few more blocks.